At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. I mean, in the end, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. My name is the VoiceOgre, and let's begin. The ship's primary generator blew, overloading the secondary. Containment failed, and the third generator followed. Rena O'Connell, humming a distorted ancient Earth tune called Disco Inferno, called it Friday. Alarms shrieked inside her helmet. Red lights flashed across her heads-up display, each one marking another system offline. The oxygen readout blinked in a steady rhythm, counting down the last 90 seconds of her breathable air. "Cadet O'Connell," a dry, precise voice crackled over the comms. "Your primary life support scrubber has failed. Your secondary O2 tank is venting atmosphere from a microfracture in the primary valve assembly. Your suit's internal pressure is dropping. Consult Coalition Engineering Manual, Section Gamma, Subsection 12, Protocol 51C for emergency valve sealant procedures." The voice belonged to Instructor Varum, a being so devoted to protocol, Rena suspected his circulatory system followed a procedural flowchart. Rena muted his channel. The manual's procedure for the tertiary sealant required 3 minutes. She had 90 seconds. "Computer, kill all suit functions except the emergency scrubber," Rena said, her voice steady. "Divert remaining power from the wrist comm and external lights." "Acknowledged. Performing Class A hazard procedure. User assumes all liability." The suit's flat voice responded. In the observation room, a floor-to-ceiling window looking into the zero-G simulation chamber, Instructor Varum flinched. The shimmering azure fluid filling the translucent tubes of his body churned, its placid flow becoming a turbulent, agitated current. A Class A hazard. Her life signs should have flatlined 10 seconds ago. Yet she was committing a violation worthy of immediate expulsion. "She's ignoring the directives," he stated, his delicate sensory stalks twitching. He addressed the air, as if announcing the transgression to the universe itself. Inside the simulation, Rena worked through new warning klaxons her action triggered. She unclipped her multi-tool from her belt, a blocky, modified Terran model scarred with burns and scratches. With a flick of her thumb, she engaged the polymer extruder. A thin, semi-translucent ribbon of rapid-cure filament spooled from the nozzle. She located the hissing seam on her suit's arm, a pinprick leak bleeding her air into the vacuum. Bypassing the manual's 15-step process involving 3 separate tools and a diagnostic check, she pressed the sticky filament over the tear. The filament bonded instantly, and the hissing stopped. The bond would hold for 5, maybe 10 minutes under these pressure conditions. All she needed was 4. The primary valve assembly on her O2 tank still needed a fix. The pressure gauge was dead. A casualty of the system failure, leaving her blind to the seal's integrity. The manual suggested a full diagnostic reboot, a 2-minute process. Rena floated to the simulated hull of the damaged starship, her mag boots clanking against the metal. A profoundly stupid idea formed in her mind, and she embraced it. She flicked the emergency release on her glove. In the observation room, the fluid in Varum's limbs whipped into a vortex. "By the coalescence! She's deliberately exposing herself to a vacuum!" For one brutal half-second, the vacuum pulled at her exposed hand. She pressed her bare thumb against the valve assembly, a numbing cold seeping deep into her flesh. She slammed her glove shut, the seals engaging with a gasp. Her hand throbbed with a sharp, insistent pain as she pulled the suit's short-range thermal sensor display. The playback showed a faint, ghost-like plume of rapidly cooling gas venting from the spot she touched. A leak. Small, but critical. She slapped another strip of polymer over the joint, then cranked the manual valve shut with her wrench. The descending red pressure line on her HUD stabilized. The reading was low, but holding. Rena pushed off the hull, floating in the chamber's center. The simulation's clock ticked down, the critical failures contained. She crossed her arms, leaned back against the imaginary void, and hummed again. The tune this time was Staying Alive. The simulation timer froze at 4 minutes and 12 seconds. A green light bathed the chamber. Simulation complete. Subject has achieved all primary objectives. Varum stared, his sensory stock sinking. The human cadet passed the Cobalt Cascade, the test washing out nearly every cadet, the ultimate arbiter of an engineer's worthiness, designed to reward unflinching adherence to procedure under unbearable stress. She passed it in under 5 minutes by committing 16 distinct, expellable offenses. The debriefing room, a cube of sterile white paneling, amplified scrutiny. Rena stood at parade rest, her focus fixed on a point on the wall just over the Academy Commandant's featureless head. The Commandant, a Zalosian named Granod, possessed a body of dense, interlocking bone-like plates resembling polished obsidian. He resonated rather than spoke, his words forming from his frame's vibrations.
16,
Granod rumbled, the sound vibrating in Rena's chest.
16 separate violations of the Coalition's engineering code, each on its own grounds for immediate expulsion. You disabled a communication device during an emergency. You executed a Class A power shunt without authorization. You willfully bypassed 18 safety interlocks. You exposed part of your body to a vacuum.
Rena held her tongue. Arguing with a mountain of bone and certainty felt like a losing proposition. Beside the Commandant, Instructor Varum stood rigid, the fluid in his limbs swirling with agitated currents. His sensory stalks, which typically drifted with placid curiosity, coiled tight. He held a datapad, his multi-jointed fingers tracing lines of data.
The Cobalt Cascade simulates a 15-minute survival scenario.
Granod continued, his voice a low thrum of shifting plates.
Your final time was 4 minutes and 12 seconds. Unprecedented. And I cannot stress this enough. Irrelevant. This academy produces engineers, Cadet. We value process, which yields predictable results over reckless improvisation.
Rena spoke. With respect, Commandant, process is a tool. The mission is the goal. The manual's repair for the tertiary sealant takes 3 minutes. My O2 indicator showed 90 seconds remaining. Following the process was a death sentence. My polymer bond cures in 3 seconds, and it holds for at least 5 minutes under those pressure conditions. The choice, it resulted in survival.
Following protocol is always a choice,
Granod stated. Dying is a failure state. Rena countered. A low, percussive sound, like plates grinding together, emanated from the Commandant. He was about to pronounce her sentence. Rena felt its weight in the air. Her career at the Coalition Academy was about to end. Then, Varum spoke. His voice was strained, fighting a deep confusion.
Commandant, if I may.
Granod turned his smooth, cowled head.
Instructor.
I have reviewed the cadet's biometric data from the simulation.
Varum's sensory stalks quivered.
Her heart rate stayed below 80 beats per minute. Her cortisol levels were nominal. All physiological metrics show that she was perfectly calm.
He looked from the datapad to Rena, his gaze analytical.
She acted with full control. Every action, however unorthodox, was deliberate and calculated.
Varum took a breath, the tubes in his chest expanding slightly.
My official report is complicated. It notes the human deliberately violated a dozen safety directives. I recommend further analysis. A mandatory psych evaluation to determine if she's a reckless anomaly or something else. I confess, the data challenges our existing models for success or failure.
The instructor's conflict was raw. His entire existence rested on the belief that the rules were an absolute shield against the Void's chaos. Rena treated that shield like a suggestion box, and she survived where nearly all of his most promising students failed. The contradiction made his worldview buffer. Grenade remained still for a long moment. The only sound in the room, the faint, metallic tang of scrubbed air in the recycler's hum. He weighed the two impossibilities. A cadet who passed the cobalt cascade, and an instructor who recommended analysis instead of expulsion.
Your file presents a problem, Cadet O'Connell.
The Commandant finally rumbled.
Your methods are anathema to this institution. Your results are undeniable.
He tapped a command into the console before him.
Standard assignment protocols prove insufficient. Therefore, Command has apportioned a new duty station for you.
The file appeared on the large screen behind him, showing a unit insignia. A stylized, skeletal avian creature perched on a cracked planetoid. Beneath it, the designation 12th Emergency Engineering Unit, Void Vultures.
The Void Vultures specialize in atypical scenarios,
Grenade said, the resonant thrum of his voice carrying a new weight.
Situations where standard protocols have already failed. Their attrition rates are high.
He looked at Rena.
Your new squad leader is informed of your unique skill set. You will either thrive there or become a cautionary statistic. Either way, your problem becomes someone else's.
Expecting expulsion, Rena instead received the most passive-aggressive promotion in the history of the Coalition fleet. A grin spread across her face. The Vulture's Nest, the home bay of the 12th EEU, looked like a high-tech chop shop masquerading as a military staging area. The air smelled of static discharge, hot metal, and the sharp tang of industrial solvent. Half-disassembled machinery sat on workbenches. The walls were scarred and stained. Memorials of past catastrophes brought home for repairs. The place felt more familiar than any of the pristine, white Academy corridors. Rena slung her duffel bag onto the deck and looked around. A being of shimmering prehensile tendrils attached to a slender metallic torso calibrated a diagnostic laser. The tool moving in precise, minute increments. Tela. Another, whose pearlescent skin glowed with a soft internal light, observed the procedure. Lycia. And the leader, Porphyr, stood in the bay's center. A Xylosian like the Commandant, but where Grenade's plates were polished and seamless. Porphyr's were rough-hewn, scored with hairline fractures and chips from countless battles. He regarded Rena's arrival with a mountain stillness. Rena squared her shoulders and walked toward him. Specialist Rena O'Connell, reporting for duty, sir. Porphyr responded with a gesture. He raised a hand and tapped a specific plate on his chest. A single, deep, resonant tone echoed through the bay, vibrating through the deck plates and into Rena's bones. He then turned his focus to a large display showing a schematic of their ship, the Manticore. The Jorlian technician, Tela, uncoiled from her work. Her two main arms terminated in a spray of dozens of hyperflexible tendrils, each one twitching and adjusting independently. A single, large ocular lens zoomed in on Rena, then focused on the multi-tool hanging from her belt. A series of soft, chittering sounds emanated from vocal nodules in her throat.
Terran maid,
Taylor said, her voice a rapid, high-pitched cascade of syllables.
Analog controls. A polymer filament extruder. How crude. Does it also function as a hammer?
Only on days that end with Y. Rena replied with a straight face. The Ore medic, Lycia, drifted over. Her form was humanoid, and the light that pulsed beneath her skin was a warm ivory.
Welcome to the Manticore, Specialist. I am Lycia. Please forgive Taylor. She finds any technology that lacks microfusion sequencing to be quaint. I find it technically offensive.
Taylor chittered. Lycia projected a soft beam of light from her palm, a gentle scan that was her species' form of a handshake. The beam felt like warm sunlight on Rena's skin.
She is human,
Lycia stated, her voice melodic.
Fascinating. Your species has a high tolerance for atmospheric contaminants and blunt force trauma.
Well, we call it character building, Rena said. Porphyr turned on the display. He tapped his chest again, a sequence of 3 tones this time. Short, long, short. The universal translator in Rena's ear rendered it as probation. He pointed at Rena with a finger of layered plates, another 2 tones, manual only. He then gestured to the ship schematic, a single sharp tap. My ship, my rules. With that, the squad leader turned and walked toward the Manticore's boarding ramp, the resonant hum of his shifting body a clear dismissal. Taylor gave Rena's multi-tool one last look before coiling her tendrils and following. Lycia offered Rena a sympathetic pulse of light that brightened and softened.
They'll come around, eventually, possibly.
Rena watched them go. Probation. Manual only. This should be fun. Taylor's tour of the Manticore was a technical sermon on the superiority of Jorlian engineering. The ship was a rugged, modified tug. But Taylor maintained its core systems with the focus of a high priestess.
The primary power conduits are triple redundant, composed of a superconductive Jorlian alloy that maintains high efficiency even under gravimetric shear,
she explained, her tendrils indicating a thick bundle of immaculate cables.
Every junction is pressure sealed and monitored by a dozen discrete sensors.
Rena nodded, running a hand along a support strut.
Impressive. What's the failsafe if the whole bundle gets sheared off?
Taylor's ocular lens contracted.
The manual details no contingency for that event. Such an event would constitute a mission-terminating catastrophe.
Right, Rena said. So it has a single point of failure. They moved into the engine room, dominated by the bulking form of the microfusion core and a massive bank of capacitors. Taylor gestured toward the capacitors.
Overspec for a vessel this size,
she said, her chittering gaining a sharper edge.
It holds enough charge to restart a stalled orbital atmospheric processor. The stored energy could power a small city for a full day.
And what happens if it discharges all at once? Rena asked, eyeing the main bus bars. Taylor emitted a soft chitter.
300 redundant safeties prevent such an uncontrolled discharge. The system would have to suffer a simultaneous failure of every primary, secondary, and tertiary regulator. The mathematical probability of such an event approaches 0.
Functionally 0 is still a number, Rena noted, pointing to the console display. The diagnostic log shows a power fluctuation on that line. Tiny, well within spec, but it's a pattern. Taylor's lens zoomed in on the readout, then back out.
The fluctuation is statistically insignificant. The system requires only standard monitoring.
She dismissed the observation with a tendrils flick and moved on. Rena made a mental note of the conduit's location. Later, Rena found the crew's sustenance reclamator offline. The small galley lay quiet, the machine's usual hum absent. A red error light pulsed weakly. The diagnostic panel indicated a microscopic misalignment in the protein slurry injector required a full system recalibration, a 4-hour process. Rena looked at the machine, then around the galley. Her gaze landed on a metal utensil in the sanitizing unit, a fork, a 4-pronged tool for consuming solid food, a novelty on most Coalition ships. She grabbed it. She popped open the reclamator's side panel, located the injector assembly, and used the fork's handle to lever a stuck gear back into place. Then, for good measure, she gave the side of the machine a firm, open-palmed smack. The red light went out, replaced by a steady green. The reclamator whirred back to life. Total repair time, 45 seconds. Lycia entered the galley just as Rena was putting the slightly bent fork back. The Ore tilted her head, the light under her skin pulsing. The unit malfunctioned. Taylor said it would require extensive recalibration. Well, the injector was just stuck, Rena said with a shrug. Needed a little kinetic realignment. Lycia processed the term. You struck it. Yep. From the doorway, sharp chitters echoed. Taylor stood there, her ocular lens wide, staring at the functioning machine as if Rena had just performed some profane sorcery. The repair deeply insulted her entire philosophy. Rena just smiled. It's stupid, but it works.
Briefing.
Porfir's voice rumbled over the ship's comm, a 2-tone command demanding immediate attention. The crew assembled in the small briefing room at the fore of the Manticore. A holographic display filled the center of the table, showing a swirling, chaotic vortex of gas and newborn stars.
The Caldus Nebula,
Porfir stated, tapping the edge of the display with a finger of interlocking plates.
Research Station Ambit has gone dark. The last transmission arrived 72 hours ago. A garbled data burst, then silence.
The nebula was a known hazard. Its gravimetric tides and intense radiation made it a graveyard for ships. Conventional Torreson drives failed in unstable spacetime. Communications dwindled to tight beam bursts with significant lag.
Missions, reconnaissance, and rescue.
Porfir continued, his voice a low hum of authority.
We enter on impulse. Locate the station. Assess its status. If the crew is alive, we render aid. If they are gone, we determine the cause of failure and retrieve the station's logs.
He brought up a multi-phase operational flowchart, a masterpiece of procedural planning with contingencies for every predictable failure.
Entry, approach, and contact will follow standard protocols 113A through 119C. Follow the plan.
He looked at each of them in turn, his gaze resting on Rena.
Specialist O'Connell, you will monitor the secondary systems. You will observe. You will report any anomalies to me. You will touch things only with my direct order.
He returned her to a console where she could stay out of the way. Rena met his gaze, her face neutral. Understood, squad leader? Porfir gave a single sharp rap on his chest. Mission accepted. Navigating the Caldrus Nebula was like sailing through a maelstrom of collapsing stars. Gravimetric waves, shred by protostars in the throes of violent birth, rocked the Manticore. The ship groaned around them, the sound of stressed metal a constant companion. Outside the viewport, cosmic gases and hues of incandescent fuchsia and electric steel swirled in hypnotic patterns. At the secondary systems console, Rena watched ghost signals flicker at the edge of the ship's sensor range. The fleeting energy signatures were too coherent for simple background radiation, but too faint to resolve. Squad leader, I'm picking up intermittent energy readings starboard, she reported. Low power, patterned. Poor Fear consulted his own console.
Sensor ghosts. The nebula is saturated with electromagnetic interference. Continue monitoring.
Rena kept her attention on the readings. The signals felt substantial. Beside her, Lycia struggled. The constant turbulence scattered her focus. The diagnostic light she normally projected to monitor the crew's health flickered and died, the beam wavering like a heat haze. She closed her eyes, her pearlescent skin dimming. "Are you all right?" Rena asked. "The gravimetric shear." Lycia's voice was strained. It scatters my focus. My light requires a stable quantum state to project effectively." She opened her eyes, the internal glow returning, but weaker. "You appear steady. Your species is known for its resilience to such phenomena." "Oh, well, I'm affected," Rena admitted, her knuckles white where she gripped the console. "My stomach is trying to climb out my throat. But you get scared, you get sick, and you do the job anyway. The trick is to function while you're scared." Lycia considered this. "A peculiar philosophy. Most species seek to eliminate fear before acting." "Yeah, well," Rena said, watching another ghost signal flare and vanish. "If humans waited until we felt safe to do something, we'd have never climbed out of that tree." They found Station Ambit adrift in a relatively calm pocket of the nebula, a dark, silent shape against the stellar nursery's violent beauty. The station ran on the barest minimum of emergency power, just enough to keep its transponder faintly chirping its identification code. As they drew closer, a strange detail emerged. A rust-like filigree of metallic, fibrous growth coated large sections of the station's exterior, shimmering in the manticore searchlights and branching out in intricate circuit-like patterns. "What is that?" Lycia murmured from the bridge. "Unknown fibrous formation," Tella reported, her ocular lens zoomed to maximum. "Scans are inconclusive. The composition is primarily a metallic alloy, but it's exhibits anomalous energy capacitance. It's registering faint, patterned energy signatures consistent with what you detected earlier, O'Connell. Scans show a sterile, cold environment." The station felt cold, leaching heat into the void. Life support was offline. The entire vessel felt like a tomb. "Porphyr, Taylor, O'Connell, suit up," the squad leader commanded, his tone all business. "We're going in. Standard 3-person breach protocol. We enter, assess, and document. Hands off until we have a complete picture." He looked at Rena. "Everything by the book." Rena nodded, grabbing her helmet. A knot of acid formed in her stomach, entirely separate from the nebula's effects. The inside of Station Ambit was a frozen hell. The frigid air filled the space, and a thick, brittle layer of the same metallic growth they'd seen on the exterior coated every surface. The growth covered walls, the consoles, and doorways in a web of shimmering conductive filaments in their suit's emergency lighting. The growth pulsed with a faint, rhythmic inner light, a slow, steady heartbeat matching the energy readings Rena detected earlier. They found the station's crew in the main science lab, 6 figures in bulky EVA suits, frozen in the positions they held when the power failed. The filament growth encased them, sealing them in metallic cocoons. Their suits were cold, their energy drained.
Lycia, do you see this?
Porphyr's voice was a low rumble over the comm.
The growth appears to have consumed them.
It preserved them, Lycia replied from the manticore, her voice tight. The suits are intact. Something drained every joule of energy from their power packs, flash freezing them. Taylor drifted closer to one of the figures, her work lights illuminating the intricate fibrous structure. Fascinating. The pattern of growth follows the suit's primary power conduits. It's a conductive bioform of some kind. She unclipped a standard sample collection laser from her belt. I'm taking a sample. Taylor, wait, Rena said, a spike of alarm in her gut. That thing is drawn to power conduits. Hitting it with a laser is a bad idea. It is standard procedure for collecting unknown geological samples, Specialist, Taylor replied. I'm following the manual. She aimed the laser. A thin, red beam lanced out and touched the growth. For a second, the growth remained inert. Then, the entire network of filaments on the suit flared with a brilliant blue light. An energy pulse shot back up with the laser beam, a visible arc of contained lightning. Ah! Taylor cried out as the pulse slammed into her collection tool. The device exploded in a shower of sparks. The feedback surge traveled through the tool's power line and into her suit's primary systems. Her HUD went blank. Her lights died. The low hum of her suit systems cut out, replaced by a sudden, terrifying silence. My systems are offline! I've lost power! I'm blind! She yelled, her voice tight with panic. Taylor tumbled in the corridor's 0G, her arms flailing. Blind and without stabilization, she was completely disoriented.
Taylor, report!
Porfir's voice was sharp, cutting through the panic. No power! Primary conduit is shorted! I can't see! Porfir was already moving, his powerful form agile as he pushed off a wall towards her.
Calm down, technician. I'm coming to you. We'll initiate a full suit-to-suit power transfer. Procedure 64 Delta.
Rena did a quick calculation. Procedure 64 Delta involves shutting down both suits' non-essential systems, carefully aligning the transfer ports, running a 5-minute diagnostic, and then initiating a slow, controlled power transfer. The whole process was a 10-minute procedure, designed to be safe and methodical. Sir, we have less than 2 minutes! Rena cut in, already moving toward Taylor from the other side. Her suit's emergency battery's draining. Her internal temperature's already dropping.
We will follow the procedure, O'Connell,
Porfir growled. Rena reached Taylor and grabbed her arm, stopping her tumble. Taylor, hold still. I'll get your display back online. How? We lack the time for a full transfer. I am bypassing the full transfer. Rena popped open the external panel on Taylor's power pack with her multi-tool. Inside, a neatly ordered array of connectors and wires greeted her. She located the redundant connector for the suit's diagnostic port, a line usually used for maintenance in a fully powered downstate. With a hard yank, she pulled it free. She opened a similar panel on her own suit's auxiliary port, a small outlet meant for powering external tools. She jammed the connector from Taylor's suit into her own. The connection erupted in sparks. A cascade of new warnings screamed across Rena's HUD as her suit's systems protested the unregulated power draw. But on Taylor's helmet, the HUD flickered back to life, dim and glitching, but functional. The deep, resonant hum that always accompanied Porfir's movements ceased. He floated in the corridor, stock still, watching her. Rena felt his disapproval like a physical weight. Taylor's voice, though shaky, filled with indignation. That bypass, you've slaved my primary visual systems to your tool port. That is a complete violation of regulations. Regulations great, Rena shot back,
already pushing toward the airlock. "Until you're a frozen statue with a perfectly compliant instruction manual clutched in your cold, dead hand. Now let's get out of here before our new friend decides it wants a second course." They retreated to the Manticore, leaving the silent, glittering tomb of Station Ambit behind them. Porphyr remained silent the entire way, but his quiet felt louder than any reprimand. Back on the Manticore, they put Tayla's suit through every decontamination cycle the ship had. Full-spectrum radiation, chemical baths, thermal scouring. The ship's top-of-the-line biosensor suite could detect a single stray microbe from 1,000 known worlds. After an hour, the console flashed a reassuring green message. Systems clear. They were in the clear. 20 minutes later, a systems alert chimed through the ship. A soft, unobtrusive sound. The kind of warning one could easily ignore. A minor power fluctuation in the aft maintenance crawl space. Then another chimed, and another. Rena stood at her console, watching the ship's power grid schematic. A creeping lacework of faint energy drains spread throughout the ship's wiring, looking distressingly familiar. "It's on the ship," she said, her voice low. "Impossible," Taylor countered. "We're on a full-spectrum decon. The sensors came up clean." "Well, your sensors are programmed to look for known biological signatures. Viruses, bacteria, spores," Rena argued. "This thing possesses an unconventional biology. It is a bioelectric parasite. A single microscopic particle, a piece of dust, must have clung to your suit. Something too small for the scanners to flag as a life form. It got into a power conduit, and now it's feeding." The main lights, flickering and dimming, punctuated her words. The powerful hum of the ship's Torreson drive, held in its pre-flight spool, whined down. Porphyr's voice cut through the rising tension.
"Taylor, initiate a standard systems purge. Isolate the affected grids and flush them with the high-energy cascade."
"On it," Taylor replied, her tendrils flying across her console, executing the standard Coalition protocol for containing a bioelectrical contaminant. On the schematic, Rena watched them try. Taylor would isolate a section of the grid, and the growth would retreat, only to appear on an adjacent, unpurged circuit. The thing learned. It adapted. It spread through the ship systems faster than the diagnostic cycles could run. The lights flickered violently this time, and stayed dim. The infection seized the Manticore, and they were trapped with it. "This is failing," Rena said, slamming her hand down on the console. The crew gathered on the bridge, the emergency lights casting long, dancing shadows. Every attempt to contain the infestation had failed, and each purge attempt had only made it stronger, feeding it the very energy they used to fight it.
"We must maintain protocol,"
Porphyr rumbled, his body a stoic silhouette against the swirling nebula outside.
"A systematic approach will prevail."
"A systematic approach is getting us killed," Rena shot back. "We're treating a disease with the only thing that helps it grow. Power. This thing thrives on energy. It's a predator, and we're just feeding it." Taylor's chittering was sharp with anxiety. "What do you propose, Specialist? That we simply let it consume the ship?"
"No,"
Rena said, her mind racing. She pulled up a schematic of the ship's entire power distribution network. "I propose we starve it. We cut the power. Everything. A full ship-wide power down." The three aliens stared at her. "A full power down? In this nebula?" Tella's voice sounded incredulous. "Without active shielding, the gravimetric shear would tear us apart. We would be adrift and helpless. The action violates at least a dozen core safety directives."
"It would be a death sentence,"
Porphyr stated,
his tone absolute. "It's a calculated risk, not the death sentence that you imagine," Marina argued, tracing lines in the schematic. "We kill the main core, all the secondary generators. We leave one single tiny power source active, the emergency life support battery. It's isolated, low wattage, and just enough to keep the air breathable. The growth is a predator. It will follow the food. It'll consolidate all of its mass around that one remaining power source. And when it does," she tapped the schematic for the engine room, "we hit that location with a focused electromagnetic pulse from the main capacitor bank." Porfir's resonant hum sounded low and dangerous.
The plan is reckless, unacceptable. We will continue to run on containment protocols.
He turned away, the conversation over. Rena watched him go, frustration tightening into a cold knot in her stomach. He would follow his precious manual all the way to the grave, and he would take them all with him. The ship grew colder. One by one, systems failed as the growth devoured the power. The environmental controls hum faded, replaced by the unsettling quiet of a dying machine. Taylor stood in the engine room, surrounded by her perfectly maintained, superior, and failing hardware. The faint, pulsing blue light of the growth now traced the power conduits along the ceiling like phosphorescent veins. Rena found her there, her arms crossed, watching the slow death of her ship. "It's beautiful, in a way," Rena said. "A pattern." Tella's ocular lens swiveled to her. "It is a parasite. It's consuming my work. The sight is grotesque." "What's the core principle of Jorlian engineering?" Rena asked, curious. What's the big idea behind it all?" Tella was quiet for a moment, her tendrils resting on a cold, inert console. "Harmony," she said finally. "The belief that every component should work in perfect, elegant concert with every other. A system should be a seamless whole, with total efficiency and confluent elements. A proper repair will be indistinguishable from a factory new component." "That makes sense," Rena said. "Humans, we have a different approach. We call it percussive maintenance, or making it work with what you've got, right?" She leaned against a support beam. "My mom had this old ground car, a fossil, combustion engine, 4 wheels, a real museum piece. The ignition system was a nightmare. Every week, something different would fry. The starter, the alternator, the distributor cap. Our garage only held a wrench and some wire, a roll of polymer tape." She smiled at the memory. "One time, the main fuse blew, lacking a spare. I took the foil wrapper from a protein ration bar, folded it up, and jammed it in the fuse box. Bypassed the whole thing." Taylor made a jittering sound of horror. "You bypassed a primary safety component with garbage?" "Yep. I got the car started, got my mom to work. The fix was inelegant, it was dangerous, and the only thing that worked, right?" Rena pushed a datapad into Taylor's hands. It had her full plan on it, schematics and all. "My plan is the foil wrapper, Taylor. It's ugly, it's crude, but it might just get the car started." Taylor looked down at the datapad. Her tendrils traced the lines of Rena's proposed power shunts and capacitor overloads. She remained quiet for a long time. The only sound was the faint, hungry pulse of the growth in the conduits above them. "The power diversion is unconventional," Taylor admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "The EMP discharge is brute force." She looked up from the pad, her large lens fixed on Rena. "But the underlying logic, the energy calculations, they are sound. The solution feels inelegant, but it functions." A shrieking alarm suddenly blared through the ship.
a sound reserved for only the most dire of emergencies, the main fusion core. The growth had reached it. On the bridge, the core temperature gauge was climbing into the red.
The magnetic containment field is fluctuating,
Tella yelled, her tendrils a blur over the console.
The parasite is draining the field emitters.
A core meltdown was imminent. Lycia, stationed between the consoles, tried to project a calming light, but her own stress made it impossible. The beams from her emitters flashed and sputtered, mirroring the failing systems around them.
We have exhausted all standard options,
Porphyr stated, his voice a low, grim rumble. The protocols had failed. The manual had failed. He looked at his dying console, then at the swirling chaos of the nebula outside. He looked at Rena, who stood waiting, her expression intense but calm. He could follow protocol and die with his crew, another tragic statistic filed away in a coalition database, or he could trust the unpredictable, rule-breaking human who had, against all logic, survived the Cobalt Cascade. He made his choice. He turned to face Rena. He struck his chest with his knuckles, a single, deep, declarative tone that cut through the wail of the alarms. A sound of command, a sound of concession.
Specialist O'Connell,
He rumbled.
you have the situation.
Kill the main breaker, now! Rena's voice echoed through the main engineering. The room was a hive of frantic, coordinated activity. Porphyr, using his incredible strength, worked at the primary power trunks, ripping heavy conduits from their moorings to create fire breaks and channel infestation towards their trap. Sparks rained down across his form as he tore metal and wire apart. Taylor manned the capacitor control console, no longer a technician, but a virtuoso performer. Her two main arms were planted on the console for stability, while her dozens of fine tendrils danced across the controls. A blur of motion as she bypassed safety after safety, rerouting every last drop of the Manticore's remaining power into a single overloaded bank. Dials screamed into the red. Warning lights flashed like strobes. Lycia moved between them, her light now a steady, focused beam. The immediate crisis had given her a focal point. She monitored their vitals, called out timings, watched the fibrous growth in a handheld scanner. The infestation is consolidating. It's moving towards a life support battery. 80% converged. Rena stood at the main breaker panel, her hand on the final massive switch. 90%, Lycia called. 95! Tella, is the bank charged? Rena yelled. It is charged beyond all safe limits. The containment field is about to collapse. Perfect, Rena grinned. She braced herself and threw the breaker. With a deafening clang and a groan of dying machinery, the Manticore went dark. The alarms cut out. The emergency lights died. The world plunged into absolute darkness and silence, leaving only the faint, isolated hum of the life support battery and the sound of their own breathing in the sudden void. As Rena had predicted, the glowing filaments of the growth across the entire engine room went dark, the light extinguished. A moment later, a new light grew, a single pulsating mass of brilliant blue, coalescing around the conduit leading to the life support battery. It had taken the bait. Okay, the good news is the plan worked, Rena said into the darkness, her voice loud in the dead ship. The bad news, the console trigger is inert, unresponsive. The overload must have fried the control line. We have to trigger it manually at the bank. Firing the pulse from the console was impossible. They needed a manual switch, a very big, very conductive manual switch. Rena's eyes adjusted to the gloom, aided by the pulsing blue glow of the condensed growth. She spotted the heavy metal maintenance panel lying on the deck, discarded by Porphyr in his conduit-ripping frenzy. Idea, she said. Porphyr, grab the panel. Tela, on my mark, you have to manually open the final gate in the capacitor. It'll be a physical lever now that the console's dead. It will fight you. The plan was insane. Manually create a dead short across the overloaded capacitor bank's main contacts using a loose piece of hull plating. Lycia managed to project a single focused beam of white light from her palm, illuminating the capacitor bank's main contacts. They were two thick, bus bar-like slabs of metal, humming with potential energy. Her voice was tight with strain. Are you certain this will work? Rena hefted her multi-tool, her knuckles white. Her grin was a slash of white in the gloom. Trust me, she said, her voice echoing in the powered-down ship. I have tried dumber things to get my mother's car started. Porphyr held the heavy metal panel, his powerful arm straining slightly, positioning it inches from the contacts. Tela wrapped her tendrils around a large insulated lever near the bank. Lycia, keep that light steady, Rena ordered. Tela, on 3. 1, 2, 3! Tela screamed, throwing her entire body into the lever. With a screech of protesting metal, the final gate opened. Now, Porphyr! The Xylosian leader slammed the panel across the contacts. The result was biblical. A flash of white light turned the engine room into a negative image, followed by a sound like cracking worlds. The air crackled with discharged energy, the shriek of 1 billion joules of energy discharging in a single microsecond, deafening. Then, silence. Absolute. The parasitic growth, caught in the heart of the electromagnetic tsunami, flared into an incandescent blue-white for a fraction of a second. Then, it crumbled, its complex metallic structure disintegrating into a cloud of inert dust that drifted in the zero-G. Only the faint, steady hum of the life support battery remained. The manticore was crippled, running on fumes, but alive. The team worked in the dim emergency lighting, a new, easy rhythm to their movements. The crisis forged them into something new. Tela, with a newfound appreciation for function over form, was soldering new connections to restore primary power. When a secondary conduit provided too much damage to replace, she acted. O'Connell, I require one of your polymer bonding strips. Rena passed one over, and watched as the Jorlian perfectionist applied the ugly, practical patch with quiet focus. Porphyr watched them work. He remained quiet since the discharge, observing. He finally turned to the command console, now running on auxiliary power, and entered his official log. He paused, then opened a new file.
Mission Report Addendum,
he recorded, his resonant voice filling the bridge.
Recommend new Coalition Engineering Protocol, Appendix C. Procedures for the application of field-expedient thermal insulation and bonding strips in catastrophic failure scenarios. Further recommend a review of Directive 77B regarding unsanctioned power shunts in imminent life-threat situations.
He looked over at Rena, who was now showing Tela how to reinforce a seal with the clever fold of the polymer. He gave a single low tap on his chest, a tone of respect. Weeks later, Instructor Varum sat at his pristine desk at the academy, the fluid in his limbs flowing in a calm, contemplative current. He was reading the official after-action report from the Ambit mission. His sensory stalks quivered as he read Porphyr's recommendation. He moved on to Taylor's supplement, a 9-page, highly technical analysis of the parasitic growth and the unregulated, full-capacitor brute force discharge method used to neutralize it. The paper was co-authored by specialist Rena O'Connell. An incoming message alert chimed. A video file from Rena. He opened it. She was in the Manticore's engine room, grinning, a fresh grease smudge on her cheek.
The ship behind her hummed with health and vitality. "Hey, Instructor!" Her voice was cheerful. "Things are going great. You'll never guess what we fixed the sustenance reclamator with this time." She held up a slightly bent metallic utensil. A fork. Varum stared at the image of the tool being presented as a valid piece of repair equipment. He looked away from the screen, and the placid fluid in his tube swirled into a complex, chaotic pattern. A deeply heretical, wildly unorthodox, and absolutely necessary idea formed. He closed the mission report and opened a new file, a proposal for a new Academy curriculum module. He typed,
Course title, XAE 101. Atypical problem-solving methodologies and applied improvisation.